Welcome to TaperTalks. In our welcoming corner of the digital world, we delve into the often misunderstood and challenging journey of tapering off prescribed medications. Here, we reveal stories of prescribed harm shared by those who have experienced it firsthand. Each episode is a step toward healing, understanding, and empowerment. We also share invaluable tips, information, and resources to help you become more informed. Each episode concludes with a calming practice to soothe your nervous system, which can help reduce symptoms. Whether you're supporting a friend, exploring a wellness journey, or finding your own path, the most important thing to hold on to is hope. Remember, no one can take this journey for you, but someone who has been down the path can take it with you. You are not alone. So let's step onto the path together, one episode at a time. Our guest today is Amy Ireland, a highly regarded and remarkable advocate who has turned her personal journey of resilience into a mission to support and educate others. After experiencing a rapid taper off Lyrica and a challenging period of healing, Amy took her experience and channeled it into helping individuals and groups understand the often overlooked and challenging side effects and withdrawal symptoms associated with gabapentinoid drugs. As the founder of the Lyrica Survivors Support Group, formed in 2010 to warn others, Amy has been a beacon of hope and knowledge, empowering countless individuals to navigate their own journeys with brain dependency-causing drugs. Amy's prior career was in corporate training, where she taught and designed courses and managed other trainers, making her well-suited to researching and educating people about these medications. Amy also wrote the foreword for My Drug Taper Journey journal book. I am honored to have her as a guest to share her insights and wisdom on this episode of Taper Talks. Welcome to Taper Talks, Amy.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here, Jody.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and I really appreciate you being here. Let's jump right in to hear your experience with prescribed harm.
Well, I was prescribed Lyrica in early 2005. It had only been out for a few months in the United States. And the reason I was prescribed Lyrica was that I had multiple issues causing chronic pain, including fibromyalgia, endometriosis, and coccyx pain from a previous fracture. Many people experience an initial honeymoon phase, and it seems like a miracle drug initially. My pain levels were drastically reduced, and I felt like I could function again when I started the drug. Sadly, with long-term use, it eventually stops working for pain and can increase it for many people. This is what happened to me. This can occur after only weeks or months on the medication. Since it was early days, I was started on the very lowest dose of 25 milligrams. Every time my pain levels increased, the medication was then increased. By the end of 5 years, I was taking 150 milligrams. My side effects were extensive, despite being on what's considered a fairly low dose. Over the years, doctors have become more comfortable prescribing the medication and turned toward it more and more often in light of the war on opiates. Now, people are started on much higher doses than I was. I'm unable to say precisely when the side effects became life-altering, but it can often take months or even years for them to become noticeable. It's so difficult to distinguish what is manifested from an underlying condition and what is a side effect of the medication. For example, my increased pain could have very well been from fibromyalgia, but I now know years later that it was actually drug-induced.
Amy, I have a question about the dose that you were on, that final dose of 150 milligrams. And that, just comparing it with the gabapentin that I was taking at 400 milligrams, 150 sounds, a lot less than that. So can you just explain a little bit about the differences between, say, gabapentin and Lyrica and those milligram differences?
Sure. The lowest dose of Lyrica, which is also known as pregabalin, is 25 milligrams. Comparatively, the lowest dose of gabapentin that's typically prescribed is 300 milligrams. So Lyrica is about 6 times more potent than gabapentin.
All right, great. Thank you for that.
I'd like to share a few highlights of my experience, which illustrate how difficult it is for patients to recognize the side effects and how doctors can miss clear signs of what is occurring and actually end up compounding drug related consequences. Unlike my increasing pain, which both doctors and myself put down to my underlying conditions worsening, some of my symptoms were issues that I never had prior to taking Lyrica. Because symptoms come on so gradually and people often lose self awareness while on this medication, I never linked my new health issues like depression and extreme anxiety to the drug. After a few years of taking Lyrica, I began avoiding interactions with other people. I didn't want to leave my house or even make phone calls. Getting ready for a social event or simply having to call for an appointment could cause me to completely melt down. Even minor decisions like what to wear seemed overwhelming and completely beyond my capability. Going to the store for groceries was an excruciating experience. So I went at night when there would be few people around. I never had symptoms like this before, and I was a very social person prior to taking the drug. Anxiety wasn't widely talked about then, and I honestly had no idea that's what was occurring for me. My doctors just put my symptoms down to depression, which is a great catch all diagnosis, and made a referral to a psychiatrist who placed me on additional psychotropic drugs. This began the cycle of polydrugging, lasting for several more years. As my pain levels increased and became unmanageable, I was also prescribed various painkillers, starting with Vicodin, then Tramadol, leading into oxycodone, and eventually Dilaudid, finally even a fentanyl patch. Just to be clear, I wasn't taking all of these medications at once, but as one didn't work, doctors would try a stronger drug. I reacted very badly when prescribed fentanyl and ended up in the hospital for a week after only taking it for a few hours. I believe my reaction was a result of Dilaudid being combined with Lyrica, because within hours of putting the patch on, I had uncontrollable tremors so severe that I could not even hold a cup of water. I removed the patch immediately and contacted my doctor, who recommended that I go to the emergency room. The doctors at the hospital claimed my reaction was withdrawal, even though I'd only been on the fentanyl patch for a matter of 2 to 3 hours. I was treated like a psych patient and an addict when what I was experiencing was physical and clearly a reaction to the medication. It took me a month to recover from that experience. I was so weak afterwards that it took about 30 days to regain my strength. Another symptom I never linked to Lyrica was tooth decay. After being on the medication for 3 years, I went to the dentist and discovered I had 13 cavities within a 6-month period. I was always diligent about going to the dentist and had never had a cavity since I was a child. My teeth were extremely healthy prior to taking Lyrica. Although it seemed odd at the time, my brain was so foggy from all the medication that I didn't think too deeply about it. Turns out, this was another missed opportunity by a healthcare professional to link the drug to side effects. It wasn't until years later that I discovered cavities, crumbling teeth, and demineralization are common with not only Lyrica, but all anti-seizure drugs. Since that time, I've lost 8 teeth due to this medication, and the ones that are left are in permanently weakened state, requiring frequent crowns and other dental work. During this time, I was still working every day. I would often find myself driving to work and suddenly have no idea where I was, where I'd been, or where I planned to go. Initially, I had to pull over almost daily until I could figure out where I was going. Eventually, this became so commonplace that it wouldn't even faze me, and I would just keep driving until I figured out where I was going. It seems incredible looking back that I never questioned these symptoms as being abnormal. I also became extremely fatigued in the mornings and again in mid-afternoon. I would struggle to get to work on time or at all, and would often find an excuse to leave early. I would struggle to stay awake while driving and go to bed as soon as I got home, sleeping for hours in the middle of the day, but never feeling rested. I also developed a low tolerance for frustration and would have road rage, become irate over the smallest things like waiting in line or even dropping something. I frequently threw temper tantrums in my car or when I was alone at home to release some of the anger. I remember throwing my neck out from pounding a pillow on my bed, and I was so grateful I lived alone because I wasn't taking my anger out on anyone else. After running the group, I met so many others who had the same problem, and several even had serious legal problems because of rage-induced episodes while taking these drugs. Again, these were brand new changes in my personality and the members' personalities that were never there prior to taking Lyrica. As my symptoms continued to worsen, I became suicidal and made several attempts without telling anyone. Finally, I checked myself into a hospital, again, without telling any friends or family. While there, not one doctor looked at my list of medications and what interactions or side effects might be occurring, let alone question the physical issues that were becoming evident, like severe anemia, low blood counts, and very low blood pressure. At this point, I was so anemic that I was referred to a hematologist. I saw so many doctors, and not one looked at my list of medications and made a link to side effects, drug interactions, or even considered that I may be over-medicated.
Amy, I just want to say to that point that I'm sure that this is quite frequently occurring with people who are experiencing this, whether it's side effects or withdrawal if they're coming off the medications. The fact that most doctors, and I don't know, it maybe it's changing. I hope it is, but when I was experiencing this, the same thing, and no one looked at that, indicating any issue with the gabapentin. In my case, is the drug, and never looked at that as a possibility of any of the symptom side effects, anything. It was always just either in my mind, melodramatic, hormones, something like that that was happening. So I think it's good for us to cover that so people know that and to talk about it so people know that who are experiencing know that they're not crazy. And that's kind of the message that I got from my doctors was that I was just kind of crazy. So thank you for bringing up that point.
Absolutely. It happens so often, and people are either dismissed or their doctors end up creating and compounding additional symptomology by prescribing more drugs. And the more medications you take, the more opportunities there are for additional side effects and interactions because these drugs have never been studied together. By this time, I had been prescribed Lyrica along with pain medication, antidepressants, and benzodiazepines. After running the group, I discovered this is much more common than I could have ever imagined. It is standard practice for doctors to prescribe medications when a patient presents symptoms, as opposed to looking at their current medications and considering whether they could be side effects or interactions. Patients are often given a new diagnosis for each symptom, resulting in a new referral, therapy, or drug, all for what could possibly be simple side effects. At the end of 4 years on Lyrica, I had to apply for disability due to my increasing physical and mental symptoms and inability to perform my job. It often takes a couple years for disability to get approved. In the meantime, I had no income, and in 2009, my house was in foreclosure, and my mom needed a full-time caregiver. I just couldn't make it on my own at that point. Bills piled up, I often missed appointments, and definitely couldn't run my household. So we decided together that I would move in with my parents and help my dad care for my mother. I went from being a fully functional member of society with an amazing career that I really loved and excelled in to being completely dependent on the government and my family for care. An incredibly stressful year after moving in with my parents, in January 2010, insurance decided that they would no longer cover my Lyrica prescription. It would cost me, out of pocket, over $500 each month to continue taking the drug. Since I didn't have any income, I had 1 month to taper. At the same time, in early February 2010, my mom passed away. And simultaneously, grieving her death, I also began the hellish journey into withdrawal. Looking back, being forced off the medication turned out to literally be a lifesaver for me. But in the meantime, I had to go through not just weeks or months of withdrawal, but years of healing from the damage the drug had caused to my brain, body, and central nervous system. The first few weeks after stopping, the pain was so intense, I didn't know how anyone could physically survive it. My symptoms included widespread body pain, far more than I experienced with typical fibromyalgia. In addition, I had cramping, migraines, headaches, sensitivity to light and sound. It was difficult to be around people and impossible to do simple things like make meals, drive a car, take a shower, let alone lead any kind of normal life for months. I remember spending a lot of time in my cold, dark basement because that's where I felt the most relief. After about 3 months of incapacitating withdrawal, I began to see some small improvements. Of course, the pain was still intense, but not at the level it was initially. I also felt like my brain was clearing. I didn't forget things to the same extent that I had before. I no longer had episodes where I didn't know where I was going while driving or couldn't find my house from a mile away. If I called someone, I actually remembered talking to them. Eventually, I noticed that I no longer had daily headaches or frequent migraines. I didn't worry about calling to make appointments, and simple tasks got easier. Although I did still experience episodes of intense anxiety for a couple years after stopping the medication. As insane as it sounds, I had no idea that what I had gone through was withdrawal. I couldn't even function for months, let alone process finding the root cause of such a wide variety of symptoms. About 6 months after going off the drug, I began seeing a counselor to process my grief after losing my mom. I told this counselor about what I had been through after going off Lyrica around the same time my mom died. That turned out to be a game changer. My wonderful counselor is the one who told me that I had been experiencing withdrawal because I was physically dependent on Lyrica after years of it changing the chemistry in my brain. She said not only did I go through withdrawal, but much of what I experienced in the previous 5 years could possibly be side effects of the medication. I was especially upset because I could have had a much better quality of time with my mom during her last year of life. I was so shocked, and I couldn't believe not one doctor had looked at my list of medications instead of being so quick to label me with one condition after another. She suggested that I investigate suing my doctor and lawsuits surrounding the drug. After taking time to process this information, my physical and emotional decline began to make sense as being linked to Lyrica, especially as many of my symptoms were improving or completely resolving the longer I was off the medication.
Amy, I have a question about the suggestion about suing your doctor or lawsuits surrounding the drug. That's come up a lot that I've seen in the groups, particularly when somebody new who's just now experiencing the effects of coming off of whatever brain dependency causing drug that they're on. Talk about that. How is it possible that this could happen? And, I even looked at that as well when it was happening to me. And I just wonder what your experience with that was, if you had any resolution with that, what you've seen or heard, or know about as far as the process of a person getting some sort of resolution legally?
Well, in the US, drug companies are protected by a law that states, to summarize, if they do not know that what you're experiencing are side effects of the medication, then they're not legally bound to be responsible for that. And informed consent is usually provided not just by your doctor telling you what all the possible side effects are, but when you receive your prescription, typically there is some kind of leaflet or directive to a long list of side effects. Most of us don't read those,
Yeah.
especially when we're not well. It's impossible to do the research and take in that quantity of information. So it's nearly impossible. There are no civil suits against Pfizer for side effects of this medication. No drug companies have been willing to take that on. And a medical attorney in our group who had developed a seizure disorder after stopping Lyrica. She was only on it for 3 months. So she extensively researched opportunities for legal action and could not find an avenue to do that. And I never pursued going after my doctor because I knew he had good intentions, and it certainly was not his intention to harm me by prescribing all these medications or referring me to other people who were also prescribing me medication.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. I just, yeah, the corporate world is very well protected, and particularly in the pharmaceutical arena. So, but that does come up. That question comes up, and I just wanted to, have you share your knowledge and experience with what's out there, and it's kind of a futile, endeavor, really. I don't know about the lawsuits for the doctors or toward the doctors. Again, that was a suggestion that was made to me, and I never did pursue it either for the same reason that you didn't. So I don't know any success or people trying to go down that route.
Yeah, I only know of one person who successfully did that, and hers was an extremely unique case and very complex. And they've actually written case studies on it. But I think for most of us, the vast majority of people who experience standard side effects, it's a very difficult path to go down. And
Mhm.
it's normal to feel angry initially. I think we do go through the stages of grief when we discover that we've been harmed by these medications. And anger is one of the first stages we all go through. And we want someone to be held accountable for what we went through.
Right.
But eventually we kind of pass through that stage and take responsibility and focus on moving forward, which is a healthy way to cope in the long term. I began searching the internet and found a post that blew my mind. Symptoms I was having, like tooth loss, anemia, anger issues, that I never dreamed would be caused by Lyrica, were posted on this message board by other patients taking the same medication. Remember, this was early in the years when Lyrica was still very new, so a lot of the side effects weren't out there and readily available for patients to discover. Everything became crystal clear once I began talking to others who went through the very same things I had gone through. I knew immediately that I had to spread the word. At the very least, I didn't want anyone else to suffer through the catastrophic effects of this harmful drug. So within a week or so, I decided to start a group on Facebook and called it Lyrica Survivors. We started with just a few members, and within the first year grew to a couple hundred. Since then, we grew to 16,000 members at the end of about 14 years. Although this number may seem, compared to other psychotropic drug groups, kind of average, I believe that because our group was banned from being searched on Facebook because it contained the word Lyrica, many more people would have found us. And many people come and go throughout these groups. So I'm sure that over the course of the last decade, many more people than 16,000 have been through the group.
Well, I know I was and still am a member of the group and in other groups as well, on Facebook in particular. And the group has been, they've been a lifeline to me, particularly when I was first experiencing withdrawal and I didn't know what was happening. And to be able to find support was just so important and very helpful to me. And it kept me from, making huge mistakes with my taper protocol and which I had done initially. So so those groups really were life-saving for me, and I'm sure they were for a lot of people too, and are for a lot of people. So, another question for you, Amy. How is life different, if it is life different for you now than before this experience that you've shared with us?
Well, it's been a 15-year journey. So 15 years ago, I was prescribed Lyrica, and I've been off for 10 years. I do have long-term health issues related to taking the medication. I have brain scans showing white hyperintensities and a small stroke. So this continues to affect my memory and my daily activities. I have to constantly compensate for the significant memory loss. And I still experience tinnitus and the tooth loss that I mentioned earlier. While there's no absolute proof that these issues are a direct result of taking Lyrica, several doctors have confirmed to me that Lyrica can cause these exact issues. And I personally know they were not present before I was taking the medication.
Well, I'm certainly sorry that that happened to you, and it happens to so many people. Some of us make it through, some of us don't. Some experience less, some experience more, as we're all different. What what did you learn from this experience that may help others who are beginning or thinking about or are right now in the midst of a taper or withdrawal?
Well, instead of focusing on all of the negative things that happened to me from this medication, I really wanted to take the things that I learned and served me moving forward. So, on the positive side, I did learn to take responsibility for my own health, probably for the first time in my life. I think from a young age, we are taught to give our power and autonomy away to doctors and other authority figures because they know better than we do. We think they're educated in all things to do with health, trained in everything to know about our bodies as well as medication. We expect them to be caring and have all the answers or be willing to search for those answers. We often follow their advice, even though no one knows our bodies and what we are experiencing better than ourselves. When we speak up and let doctors know what is happening, and sometimes family and friends, we are frequently met with resistance or worse, arrogance, and feel dismissed. I can't tell you how many of my group members were told, "Oh, that's a rare side effect. It couldn't possibly be from the drug." Or symptoms will go away if you just stay on the medication or increase the dose. Many people are told, despite clear research to the contrary, I've never had a patient who's had withdrawal. It just doesn't happen. And it definitely doesn't last for months or years. The hard truth is that it's impossible for doctors to know everything about the human body, and truly impossible to be educated about the thousands of medications that are prescribed on a daily basis. The majority of time, doctors don't have time to spend on your case once it leaves the office, even if they want to provide more help. Often they are barely trained on topics like nutrition or what constitutes a healthy diet. They also follow general guidelines, or what's called best practices. While these guidelines and practices may cover the majority of patients, many fall outside these guidelines and are simply dismissed. Patients are told nothing is wrong. You're healthy. This occurs frequently with blood tests, as there is a huge difference between falling within the established normal range and actually being in the range that is optimal for your body. I've learned to do a lot of my own research. And now I go to a doctor that appreciates this rather than discourages it. I look at my test results and I read about what they mean and how they compare to my past results. More importantly, I evaluate how I feel comparatively to the results. I prepare ahead of time for my appointments, making a list of symptoms, questions, and concerns. I've also completely changed the way I eat, and I discovered what makes my condition worse or helps me feel better. I've learned not to rely on drugs or treat my chronic health issues with medication. While there are appropriate times to use medication, I'm not saying never ever take another medication, but every symptom doesn't need a drug to treat it, and other options for treatment should be explored first. I've learned a lot about natural remedies and many other therapies that can aid in healing the body. I look for tools that help me feel better, and I'm willing to try most things and keep an open mind. I'm always saying, if it can't hurt me and might help, why not try it? There are so many options out there that can help, and it is important to find the ones that work for you and ones that you enjoy implementing. For example, I have found that meditation made a huge difference in my overall health, helping to manage daily stress and decrease pain. But I didn't just start out sitting cross-legged for an hour and finding bliss. I had to try lots of different methods, explore ways of approaching meditation, and most of all, practice and keep trying when I stopped practicing or fell off the wagon. How I practice also changes based on how my body changes. I can't sit still, especially initially when I was going through withdrawal. So instead, I walked in nature and mindfully focused on my surroundings. That's also a form of meditation. My point is that each one of us is unique, and what works for me may or may not be helpful for you. But if you keep looking, you will find things that improve your symptoms and your overall health.
What advice would you give to someone who may be considering a drug taper or coming off a drug that can cause brain dependency?
I think most importantly, people should make a plan and not implement changes impulsively. A lot of times when people learn about these medications and that they are experiencing side effects, they want off immediately. That's one of the worst things to do is stop suddenly. It can cause serious harm and even permanent conditions like seizures. So take time to learn about withdrawal practices and how to safely taper. Sometimes it's appropriate to talk to your healthcare provider or providers, family, friends, and it's very helpful to find peer support, other people that are going through the same thing. Sometimes your doctor, family, friends will not be supportive, want to hear what you're experiencing, or want you to taper. So find a community of people that will support you. It might be necessary to find a doctor who's knowledgeable about withdrawing from psychotropic drugs. Now, many are available online for virtual consultations, so that's a great option if your local doctor isn't available or willing to listen. Know that while you may find many things in common with others who are tapering, your journey is going to be unique to you. Try to be realistic about the process. Of course, expect some challenges, but it's also critical not to catastrophize and believe you're going to experience the worst case scenario. It's important to create a balance between going online and looking for peer support and getting too immersed in an online group because it can become overwhelming and cause you to think you're going to experience or you are experiencing a lot more things than will really happen. So find the people, groups, and methods that work for you. There are lots of groups out there now. Some are very well run, and others were started with the best intentions, but people eventually move on. So join several groups and find the ones that work for you. I can't emphasize enough that we all have individual medical, genetic, social, economic, and emotional factors that all combine to create an entirely new case unique to each of us. There is no single right way to taper.
Amy, please tell us about your online support group and if it's still active.
Originally, the group was called Lyrica Survivors, and eventually, over the years, it evolved to include both gabapentinoids, so Lyrica, which is also known as pregabalin, as well as Neurontin, also known as gabapentin. About a year ago, I changed the name to BeyondGabapentinoids for several reasons. During my time running the group, I also became active in the online drug withdrawal community, connecting with other admins who run similar groups for other medications like antidepressants, benzodiazepines, Z drugs, which are often known as sleeping medications, as well as antipsychotics. After 14 years, due to the increasing restrictions on the Facebook platform and a desire in my own life to focus on overall healing, I closed the group in January of this year. Currently, there are several other groups out there focusing on gabapentinoids as well as other medications. As I said, they run the gamut, and if one group isn't meeting your needs or you don't feel comfortable there, keep looking because there are a lot of groups available. And there's a lot of crossover in terms of how you taper and the advice that you would need to go through withdrawal. Currently, I'm in the process of discovering what the next chapter of my life holds. I remain passionate about educating people on the topic of psychotropic drugs, especially gabapentinoids, but I do want to focus on the larger picture of healing and health moving forward.
Thank you, Amy. Is there a final thought that you would like to leave our listeners with? How do we overcome it, deal with it, and move forward?
It's important not to let anyone tell you there's one way to resolve your health issue, go through withdrawal, or fix symptoms that you're experiencing, or that there's only one way to treat your condition. There are so many options available online that it can become confusing, and you will always have people telling you that you have to eat a certain way, take specific supplements, or develop a certain practice that they use to feel better. This just isn't true. Know that what worked for someone else may or may not work for you. The key is to keep looking at options and trying different things. My health didn't improve in a matter of weeks or months or with one specific supplement. It was a matter of making small, sustainable changes over time that cumulatively added up to huge improvements. And I'm still a work in progress all these years later.
So am I. Amy, thank you. I really look forward to continuing this important conversation, and I hope that you will come back and join us again. I know you've got a lot of followers, and you're very well respected in the community. And so I look forward to having you again, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. And I'll just let people know how they can find me now. I did create a new Amy Ireland profile after Facebook closed the profile I was running the group under. So if they look for Amy Ireland, they should be able to find me on Facebook. And that's where I'll post updates as new developments occur, or if I move to another platform or do things like TaperTalk. And I'm also available by email. So BeyondGabapentinoids@gmail.com is a great place to reach me. And for those of you who have been with me for many years, my old email is also still active, and that's lyricasurvivors@gmail.com.
Wonderful. And I will include the email address that you just mentioned in the show notes so people can find it there. Thank you, Amy.
Appreciate your time, Jody. Thanks so much for having me on.
Amy, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude for sharing your story of heartbreak and courage with us. Your bravery in opening up about such personal experiences is truly inspiring, and your journey has resonated deeply with me. Your strength and resilience are a testament to the human spirit, and your story provides valuable information to many, including myself. Thank you for your vulnerability and for reminding us all that we are not alone in our struggles. During those times when you're experiencing a withdrawal wave, feeling scattered, having intrusive thoughts, or feeling overwhelmed, try a simple grounding technique. Deep breathing. Take slow, deep breaths to calm your mind and body. Inhale for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and exhale for a count of 6. Sensory grounding. Engage your senses by observing 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Safe place visualization. Imagine a place where you feel safe and calm. Imagine the sights, the sounds, and smells of this place in as much detail as possible. Hot shower. Let the warm water soothe your body and mind. Sea salt or Epsom salt bath. This can help relax you and reduce stress. Walk barefoot in the grass. Feel the earth beneath your feet to reconnect with nature and the energy of our planet. Hold a crystal or rock. The tactile sensation can provide a sense of stability. Drink some water. Hydrate your body and help your mind feel clearer. Hold an ice cube. The cold sensation can bring you back to the present moment. Splash face with water. A refreshing splash can provide an immediate sense of alertness. Essential oils. Using calming scents like lavender or citrus to help relax your senses. Lay on the ground. Feel the solid earth beneath you for grounding and support. Run water over your hands. This sensation of running water can be very soothing. Physical exercises. Engage in activities like walking, yoga, tai chi, or simple stretches. Spend time with pets. Their presence can be incredibly comforting and grounding. Feel the wind. Step outside and feel the wind on your face to connect with the natural world. Meditation. Spend some quiet time in meditation to center your mind. Gardening. Engage with plants and soil to ground yourself. Listening to music. Playing calming or favorite music to soothe your mind. Stress ball. Squeeze a stress ball to release tension. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of this episode. If you have a story to share, topics you'd like to see covered, or information to provide, please reach out to me at TaperTalks@gmail.com. May we be at peace in our hearts, may we be at peace in our homes, and may we be at peace with one another. Remember, you're not alone, not now, not ever. Don't give up.